Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the University of Denver's virtual open house. We're in our last night of 2 weeks of webinars, so I'm excited to have you all still with us as we go through all these different opportunities to meet and learn from our amazing staff and faculty at the University of Denver. And now we're going to be learning about history. And before we get started, just as a reminder, we have closed captioning available at the bottom of your screen. We also will be using the Q&A feature for any questions that you have. We should have time throughout the presentation, at least at the end, to be able to get your questions answered. And now I'm just going to hand it straight off to my friend and colleague, Jonathan, to be able to talk about history at the University of Denver.
Thank you. My name is Jonathan Sharkin. I am the chair of the Department of History at the University of Denver. My own research specialty is Middle East history, modern Middle Eastern history, and I teach courses on the modern Middle East, on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, on U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, and on Jews in the Islamic world. And I've been at the University of Denver for 14 years, and this is my third year as chair of the department. Just starting off talking about our history department, I want to really stress we are an undergraduate only department, so we do not have graduate students. We do have a good amount of majors, however, and I'll get to that in a second. But before I do that, we have 13 full-time tenure track faculty members. Nearly all of our courses are taught by our tenure track faculty members. I say nearly because every 7 years, those of us with tenure are eligible for a sabbatical. And in the middle, in between sort of sabbaticals, we're also eligible for mini sabbaticals. So sometimes we do have adjunct faculty filling in for faculty who are on leave, or in my case, I have a course reduction because I'm also chair of the department. But over 80% of the courses in our department are taught by our permanent faculty members. Again, we are solely focused on undergraduate teaching. Our faculty teach 5 courses per year plus capstone advising. So I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. Our teaching areas are Native American history, United States history, European history. We recently, 2 years ago, added African history, East Asian history, Middle Eastern history, Latin American history, and ancient history. So we're a relatively small department if you compare us to, bigger state schools. I myself went to the University of Delaware as an undergrad and UC Santa Barbara as a graduate student. Those departments were gigantic. But what that does mean is, for Middle Eastern history, for example, I am the only one. Like, I am Middle East in that sense. We have one faculty member who does East Asia, one who does Africa, one who does Latin America. So students would be able to take courses with those faculty members, but there is a chance every 7 years that, those faculty members will be on leave. So we can't promise that we offer those courses every year. We can promise that we offer them 6 out of every 7 years. Would you please? Oh, perfect. So some curricular highlights. So our major has 44 credits. All of the courses in our major are 4 credits. So that's 11 courses. We have 4 courses that all students need to take. We call these our capstone courses. And the goal is to create not only sort of like a coherent major for our students, but it's also to create a cohort. So every student who graduates together, they get to know one another. And it's also so students can accomplish something together. And in our case, that is a thesis. We are one of the departments on campus that requires that students complete an undergraduate thesis for graduation. The 4 courses that all students need to take are Issues in Comparative History. Normally, students take that winter quarter of junior year. It is only offered once per year. It is a co-taught course. It is the largest course in our department because it's co-taught. It's at 40. Most of our courses are between 20 and 30 students. This one is the only one that has a larger cap, and that's capped at 40. We have a methodology course that students have to take before Senior Seminar 1 and 2, which is normally spring of junior year, but it could be spring of sophomore year if students are going to be studying abroad their entire junior year. And then we have Senior Seminar 1 and 2, which are fall and winter of senior year, unless some students in a 4+1 program have opted to take that junior year. And so let me just explain a little bit about Senior Seminar 1 and 2. Senior Seminar 1 and 2 are courses where the students 1 day a week are with the entire graduating class, or at least the entire class writing theses. Again, sometimes they might be juniors. So 1 day a week, they're with a dedicated professor who teaches the course, and they meet together as a group. And in Senior Seminar 1, they work towards creating an outline of a research paper. The other day per week, however, they meet individually for about 45 to 60 minutes with a dedicated faculty mentor, which could be the Senior Seminar 1 instructor, but there's a 90% chance or more so that it won't be. So all students are assigned a primary faculty mentor with whom they work for 20 weeks over the course of Senior Seminar 1 and 2. In Senior Seminar 2, it's the same format as Senior Seminar 1, except the group is working on completing their thesis. So they'll meet 1 day a week with the entire group, and then the other day they'll meet for, again, roughly 45 to 60 minutes with their faculty mentor. At the end of this 20-week process, because DU is on quarters, students complete a 25 to 35-page original thesis, which they also present we either hold it in week 8 or 9 at the Undergraduate History Conference in winter quarter. That's our big annual event. It's a catered event. All the history faculty members will be there. A lot of other majors who are not yet working on their theses will be there as well. We often have families that are able to make it, and or friends to support the students. Moving beyond these, I do want to note that all students, and I can always tell you about this in the future if anyone wants to email me, our other major requirements. All students need to take one 1,000 level course in history, 2 2,000 level courses in history, 2 3,000 level courses in history, and then 3 courses at any level. We do have a distribution requirement because we have 7 distinct fields, which are Latin American, African history, East Asian history, Middle Eastern history, European history, US history, and pre-modern history. We require that students take at least 1 course in 4 of those 7 fields. So we don't have a concentration because students will write a thesis, but we do have a distribution requirement that all students need to hit. I do want to note one of the main differences I've noticed, having been someone who went to 2 schools I'm thrilled I went to, but 2 much larger schools at Delaware and Santa Barbara. There, all students had to take introductory sequence either in US history, world history, sometimes Western civilization. We don't do that at DU. So all lower division courses in our department are courses that our faculty members have specifically created because they want to teach them. And I mention that because when I was a grad student at UC Santa Barbara during the first decade of this century, I remember the faculty members fighting over who didn't have to teach these courses. They didn't want to teach the introductory courses. What I promise you is that all faculty members in our department want to teach the courses they were offering because we've created all of the courses we're offering. We wouldn't offer them if we didn't want to teach them. The other thing is, again, we have small class sizes. Our 1,000 and 2,000 level courses are capped at 30. With the exception of issues in comparative history, which is capped at 40, and our 3,000 level courses are capped at 20. Would you mind going forward 1 slide? Thank you. There are also additional opportunities within the department. We've had what's known as the Veterans Legacy Program, where we received funding from the Department of Veterans Affairs to have students under faculty mentorship conduct research into veterans who are buried at the Fort Logan National Cemetery, which is about 6 to 7 miles southwest of campus. Might actually be a little less than that. And so students have done research there. They've presented. Here is the picture here is from the project known as More Than a Headstone, which was a curated collection at the library on DU's campus for a period of time. We also do allow students to take internships for credit. And we do have some funding for students to receive money for their internships. We do have service learning opportunities every now and then. I don't want to promise this because faculty are not make faculty teach service learning courses, but we do have a couple faculty members who at least every other year teach a service learning course. And I also want to note that we have support for student research. So students who are writing their theses, sometimes in between fall and winter, will travel to archives mostly around the country. Sometimes they go out of country, but we sometimes don't have the resources to support that. But we basically can support any student who wants to go study at an archive in the United States and spend a few days there. Some of our funding comes from central resources known as the Partners in International Scholarship through undergraduate research, but we also actually have a dedicated fund known as the Sturm Fund, named in honor of Stephen Sturm, who was actually an undergraduate at DU when I arrived in the early 2010s. And he and his family have provide funding on an ongoing basis for students who do not receive PINS funding to still be able to go and conduct research at archives in the United States or again abroad. Just what normally happens with students studying abroad is we can cover part of it, but students will have to make up the rest of the money themselves. So why consider majoring in history at DU? So first of all, we have super strong faculty mentoring and advising. Students will be assigned a permanent, or well, I shouldn't say permanent, but will be assigned a faculty advisor and mentor as soon as they declare the major. And so they have an initial point of contact, plus they can always come to me as chair of the department. And so this is not a department with professional advisors. These are who are staff advisors, not that there's anything wrong with staff advisors, but you will get advised by a faculty member. And then either junior or senior year, normally senior year, when students write their thesis, they are either assigned the same faculty mentor or a different faculty mentor to guide them through the thesis project. And what I really try to emphasize to students, what this means is students are effectively guaranteed, as long as they do their work, someone, and normally at least two people in our department who can write a really strong and pretty personalized, detailed letter of recommendation for them coming out of our department, whether that's for a graduate program or if they need someone to serve as a reference for a future employer. So students will get to know at least one or two faculty members in the department just by default. And as long as they're active in class and visit office hours, they'll certainly get to know other faculty members in the department. Students in our department will also be able to develop really strong transferable communication skills and also research skills. So our courses are very much geared, we do have lecture, but it's very much geared towards discussion, towards critical thinking, towards students conducting research, especially senior year in the capstone courses, and in developing their writing skills. So these are the kinds of important transferable skills, and also I should note soft skills that I think a lot of employers are looking for today. We're an established and growing major. So we are, I believe I haven't, the university was founded in 1864. I've only been here since 2010, but I know at least going back to the early 20th century, history has been a major at DU. So I'm pretty confident it's one of the oldest majors at DU. And I also want to say it's a growing major. We've always been healthy since I've been here, but when I arrived, we normally had between 50 and 70 history majors. We now have over 100 history majors by the end of each year. I can tell you as of right now, which is middle of the year, we have 94. And so we're well on our trajectory to exceed 100 plus majors. So we have an active major group. We normally have in any given year, between 25 and 30 students in the graduating cohort. Again, those students really have an opportunity through being together in what is history, through being together in Senior Seminar 1 and 2, to get to know one another, to network, and to establish lifelong connections. In terms of post-DU careers, we've had a lot of students end up going to law school. I myself have written letters for students who have been accepted and matriculated at Northwestern University for law school, University of Chicago, and University of Denver. We do have a lot of students who end up going into government. Some students really also take advantage of internships in local government and end up sticking around Colorado, working in one way or another. We do have students who a good amount who go into education. And then we have other students who go into other fields that one might not think are that connected to history. But again, I think where the transferable skills really pay off, and also our location in between downtown Denver and the Denver Tech Center, which is located about 12 miles southeast of the city. So we do have a lot of students who go into sales. We have a lot of students who go into tech. And, you know, I get to see the alumni reports. Our students tend to have really high graduation rates and tend to do very well in via the, you know, the employment metrics that DU follows for alumni. Oh, so why DU? And this is, you know, biased faculty perspective. I am a salaried employee, but I do like being here. This is, I just want to note, this is a good job. You know, a lot of us, and myself included, had other offers, and we chose to be here because we wanted to be at the University of Denver. Many of us wanted to be in this area, and many of us wanted to work in a great department where we get to focus on undergraduate education. And so I really want to highlight not that this might not seem like it would matter for students, but I think it's really important that there's a lot of collegiality within the department and across campus. Our faculty members actually really like one another. We really like our students. It's a really great working environment. And I say that as someone who's a pretty reclusive only child. I enjoy going to work every day, working with my colleagues. And a lot of times I'll be asked by colleagues at other universities where history departments are struggling to maintain their major numbers, you know, how is your department doing so well? And I highlight I think it's, in my view, it's a combination of having excellent students who are really attracted to the research component. I think it's also linked to, you know, it's also a combination of that with strong faculty mentorship and advising, but also the fact that our faculty members are people that students want to work with. They're good people with great personalities, and they love their subjects. And so I would say, you know, again, the ability to work closely with students in the classroom and through advising is something that all of our faculty treasure. And as a faculty member, that's part of the reason why I want to be at DU. I think for anyone, students or faculty members, you know, Denver's a vibrant city near a lot of interesting sites. I think most people focus on the mountains. I actually really like the plains, a lot of biodiversity. I enjoy the contrast between sort of the rolling plains and the mountains, which we are in the Western Plains, but we're within, you know, 12 miles of the mountains. You can see the mountains from campus. We're also really well situated. We're in the southern suburbs. We're right off the light rail line. It's really easy to get to downtown Denver. But if you're a student who doesn't want to be in the city, but wants to have access to a city, you know, we're not in the city. We're not in, you know, we are technically in the city proper, but we're not right downtown. So you can sort of escape the hustle bustle, get back to campus. And I should also note, we have numerous campus events. It's funny coming to this talk because I wasn't late, but I showed up right on time, largely because I was coming from another campus event that a colleague was putting on for the students in her class. It was a philosophy course. Last night I was on a panel with other faculty members through my college, the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, talking about the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And so there are just events basically on a daily basis at DU in terms of academic events. And then there are a lot of cultural events. There are a lot of sporting events. And my son, who's in third grade, in fact, his third grade group took a field trip to campus yesterday to come see a ballet production at the Newman Center on campus. So our campus events even attract, you know, a lot of community members, including elderly members of the community who really want access to, you know, intellectual and cultural events, all the way to elementary school kids like my son, who get to come and also partake of the cultural events. So it's a really busy campus. And so here's my contact information. It's just my first name dot my last name at du.edu. Please note that as a department chair, I work year round. And so you are welcome to contact me at any point, and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as I can, but certainly within 24 to 48 hours. And I welcome questions, and I also always welcome visits.
I always get so excited when I hear you. I'm like, yeah, That's right, me too. So we did have a question in the Q&A about double majoring. This question is specifically about international studies, political science. So talk a little bit about how that works with history.
Yeah, it's actually we have a lot of international studies and political science double majors. They're both considered bachelors of arts programs, and so they're actually really easy to do. Both of them just require I can't remember the credit amounts. But yeah, it's there's nothing extra you have to do to double major in political science and international studies. And I believe something like 80% of our students have other double majors. I'll just note where the double majoring becomes really difficult is if you're trying to do a dual BS BA degree. There are some extra requirements on the BS side that make that really difficult. And for anyone who's interested in the Lamont School of Music, it's often difficult to do a double major because that program is super intensive. That's a wonderful program, by the way, with just tremendous world-class faculty members, but it's often very difficult for those students to do double majors. But in terms of BAs, whether it's international studies, political science, it's really easy to do. The one conflict that students will sometimes come into is we only offer our senior seminar 1 and 2 capstone courses and what is history capstone one quarter per year and one time that quarter, and those are non-negotiable. So if you are intending to double major, you just have to do a little advanced planning. Political science, for example, is a little easier. They do have a capstone course, but it's only 1 quarter and they offer it multiple times per year. And as you can tell, I'm good friends with the chair, Josh Wilson, of political science, and political science is right upstairs. So I'm also very familiar with their program. And this is where it's really important for any student, to have faculty advisors, in my view, because we know a lot of this information and we can share it.
Because of our quarter system, there's a lot of students that double major, double minor. So it's definitely not unusual. We don't admit by major, and I think that also helps. And so that's actually one of the next questions is minoring in another division, and if that ever becomes a problem.
That often does, within another division, I want to be careful here. Because I think that there are some, I can't speak totally about the natural sciences, mathematics, and the College of Engineering. I am aware that there are some programs that do draw, like the sustainability minor, for example, where there are courses from the natural sciences and mathematics college, which, that's a pretty popular minor for our majors, and there's no conflict. If it were something like chemistry or, like a calculus minor or a math minor, I'm actually quite honestly not sure how that works. But I will say if it's something like international studies, which is in a different college, that is very easy to do.
Business?
We do have students who are business minors, who are history majors and business minors as well.
Yeah. And then we have a question about someone interested in military history, and is there any opportunity to focus in that area?
So we don't have anyone who's like explicitly a military historian. However, Professor Susan Chilton, for example, is literally one of the country's leading experts on Civil War history, and she often advises thesis topics on the Civil War, on the presidency of Abraham Lincoln. And so we do have military history that factors into our courses. We don't often have dedicated courses on military history. That said, we do offer the opportunity for students to pursue a thesis that is military history related, and we always have a couple of those every year. So even if there's not a course that's dedicated to military history, there is the thesis opportunity in military history.
Okay. And then can you talk a little bit about internships? Like what kind of internships would a history major actually get in the Denver area? Or
sure. So
the Denver area, I guess.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of students do internships at Casa de Paz, which is in Aurora, which is not far from campus, which works with a lot of asylum seeking and refugee communities in the area, sort of getting to understand their histories and their backstories. So I know that's one local group we've partnered with. We've also in the past, I believe, partnered with History Colorado. And I know that Carol Helstosky, who was central to bringing the Veterans Legacy program to our department, she was my immediate predecessor as chair of the department and is a full professor in the department. She's really working hard right now to ensure that students have internship opportunities with local veterans organizations, because that's a big part of her work, and it's a big part of her research. I will also note, and this was thanks to Carol, after she became chair, we had a student who recently did an internship in Nebraska. There are 2 sites in the United States where that conduct research into the lives of, or I shouldn't say into the lives of, they try to identify the remains of unknown soldiers who were who lost their lives in both the European and the Pacific theaters during World War II. So it's amazing. I mean, this is 75 or more years ago, and they're still identifying the remains of people. The Pacific theater location is in Hawaii. The European theater location is in eastern Nebraska. And we had a student who was able to earn an internship in Nebraska. I think wanted to go to Hawaii, and honestly, in the manner of transparency, we could offer money, but we couldn't quite offer enough to ensure that the student would be comfortable with Hawaii. Nebraska is both closer and cheaper. So we were able to ensure that the student could spend the summer in Nebraska conducting research into into the European theater. And when they started to identify remains of people, trying to sort of learn, piece together their stories.
So we actually somebody asked, is that internship still available?
I think it's annually. It's on sort of like my understanding is that these are available on a rolling basis. We don't have like necessarily a reciprocal program. I think that we were at the time maybe the only university that was able to place a student there. And this is only because Carol is really dedicated to this, had won funding through the Department of Veterans Affairs, and reached out, and they said, yes, we would love to have a student. Other people haven't often asked about that. So my guess is this is something that would be a possibility in the future, but I don't want to overpromise. It's not something that I can guarantee. It could be that organization on an annual basis has different levels of funding, even though we provided a good amount of the funding for the student.
I feel like that's one of the nice things about DU is that we don't just say, here are your 3 options, pick your 3. It's more of like, what are students' interests? And then that also kind of helps in faculty interests, and that also helps sort of drive what's available, sort of a win-win situation.
It is. And I really, this is important for me to note. We do have a dedicated internship coordinator in our department who receives a 1-course release because this is their job year round. Right now, it's Professor Elizabeth Escobedo, who also actually worked with Carol Helstowski on the Veterans Legacy Program. And really, I mean, Liz teaches, 4 other courses, but her other job, part of her job is to work individually with students to locate internships, not just in Colorado, but around the country. And I know she's constantly contacting organizations in California and in other parts of the country to try to help set up internships for students. And keep in mind that many of our students, are from outside of Colorado. So we often also try to set up internships over the summer, where their families are located.
Yeah. Related dotted line, when it comes to study abroad, is that pretty much an open book where students go all over the place, or are there a couple key places that students tend to navigate towards?
I think a lot of students tend to navigate to Italy, to the UK, to the Netherlands, to Germany, to Australia. We do have some students who have studied in the Middle East, some students who study in Latin America, some students who study in Africa. A former advisee studied in Japan, but I do think Western Central Europe and also Australia tend to be the really popular places. One thing I do want to note for study abroad, we have a lot of reciprocal programs through DU, so you can automatically transfer back history credit. I do from the outset, and I do this for every new major, so I will just do it now as well. I do warn students about 2 things with study abroad. They're not bad things. They're just things you need to know about credits for DU. It's really difficult to transfer back 1,000 and 3,000 level courses from study abroad. They mostly transfer back as 2,000 level courses. So students doing study abroad should recognize that they will be transferring back mostly 2,000 level credit. They need special permission for it to be 1,000 and 3,000 in history. And quite frankly, I have to reject a lot of those requests because they don't correspond with the kinds of courses we offer on those levels. And then the second thing, because we're a quarter institution and most study abroad programs are on the semester system, they transfer back as 6 credits and not 4 credits, which depending on, the amount of credit students have at DU might complicate certain things. So students just need to do some advanced planning. None of this is like insurmountable. These are really easy issues, but students need to be aware.
I will mention that when you have to, you're pre-approving, which is very different from after a student takes a class and then trying to get it transferred back into DU. So that's how students are able to then pivot and make different choices because they know before they leave what classes will transfer in and which ones won't.
Yes, but students don't always do that.
Hi, Kitty. How are you? Okay, sorry.
I'm so sorry, my cat. Yeah, but students don't always do that. So
yeah,
that is my preferred method. And if students do that, I can always let them know in advance. We do get a lot of students because we get a lot of students who add the major middle of junior year who will say, oh, I've studied abroad. Can this count for the major or can this count for the minor? And the thing with minors, for any of you who end up being history minors, as chair of the department, I do not know who's a minor. There's no way to keep track of that. I know how many majors we have. We literally have hundreds of minors. And students can get a minor without actually ever meeting with the chair of the department. It just automatically shows up on their transcript.
Yeah. So what I like to tell families is that because of the quarter system, because you're not admitted by a particular major or school or division, there's a lot of flexibility. And so, but that requires a little bit of communication as well. And I've taken you a little bit longer for your evening, and I apologize, but we'll probably wrap up our questions now. I put Jonathan's email address in the chat so you can easily copy and paste it into a different document. And Jonathan, I really appreciate your time and your passion for DU as somebody who is a 2-time DU alumna and been working at DU for 23 years. I share your passion, both for the city, the state, and for the school. So I appreciate your time, and for everybody else that's still with us this evening. Have a good rest of your day.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.